In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these fun little fabric embroidered pots. Hi everyone, it's Sarah from Sarah Homfray Embroidery. So I showed you these little pots in a previous Tuesday chit chat video, and you all really liked them and said you'd like to know how to make them. So that's what we are doing today. So I'm going to show you lots of samples because there's lots of places you can go with this project, and hopefully you'll get some ideas and have lots of ideas of your own. So let's just delve into my little selection here. So there's a couple of types of pots. So these little ones here are basically a tube with a bottom that goes on afterwards. We make this part and then we attach the circular bottom to it. I've made these ones out of slow stitching, and this one's got a little tea light in it as well. So you can make them specifically to put things in. Obviously don't use a real tea light in these. Don't set fire to your embroidery. Use the little ones with the batteries in them. So that can go in there. So we've got a couple of little slow stitch ones, the ones with the bottoms that go on it. I've got one made the same way with the tube and the bottom, but this is needlepoint. This is a canvas stitch one. You might have seen this one before. This was my mindful embroidery. We just had to go with some stitches without doing a particular design or anything like that, and I've turned it into a little pot. So it's really great just to turn your little samples into. So that's a little needlepoint canvas work one. So this one's along the same lines but a little bit bigger than those previous ones, and I've done this on a little bit of quilting. This is a bit of vintage quilting. I've added some stitches and some bit of lace and some ribbons, and I've done a little applique bird on this one as well. So you can decorate them however you like. Like I said, there's lots of places you can go with this project. So that's one of those. Got some little ribbons on the back there. And the other way of making a pot is to do the stitching all in one. So we don't add the base on to this one. This is stitched all in one. So you can see the fabric goes around the bottom and then up the sides as well. So I will show you the first method of the tube with the base on it, and then I will just run through this method with you, and I'll just talk through how to do that if you're interested in this one. So you can either freestyle your pots or you can use a form and work it around a form. So I'll show you the form in a second. But if you've got some pieces of embroidery that you've already done, this is great for freestyling it. You can turn it into a pot. So it's worth having a little look through your collection and see what you have got and see whether that might make a nice pot. So I've pulled out a few samples from my own collection. I'm just going to show you those quickly and show you how I'm thinking about it and how I'm making the decision on whether it would make a good pot or not. So some of you might recognise this one. We've done a video on this and we've stitched this, and the design is there on a free stuff page of our website as well if you want to have a go at this. And a long format, so something that's sort of an oblong format, is really good for a pot because you think you've got to curl it around into a form. So I thought this would be really good because it's got a lot of stitching in it, so it's going to be quite a stiff pot when it's finished, so it's not going to collapse and fall in on itself. So this would be really good. Something with heavy dense stitching on it is really great. It's the right format. It's this rectangular shape. It doesn't go right to the edges in square lines, but I'm not worried about that. So I would fold that in and just turn it around. Those edges would join up. This would all disappear into the middle. This would disappear into the bottom, and you can see what your pot would look like. So you can actually handle your embroidery and see, would this make a really nice pot? I think that one would be a gorgeous pot. And I was going to show you how to do this project with this one, but I think actually I probably need to concentrate quite carefully. So I'm going to save that one, but I just wanted to show you what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking about it. So this is another one from one of our videos. I went out into the forest and picked some leaves and we drew around them and we stitched them. So this will be another great one because again it's that format, and I have quite a few embroideries that are good for this because I make them in that format to fit on the screen for you to watch. So I have quite a few that are good format. So again, just turn the ends in. You can turn the top over if you want, fold it round, join it up and see, would that make a good pot? I think these are all make good pots. I think I'm going to have a pot making session. So that would work really nicely as well. Again, lots of stitching on it, some felt on it, so it's nice and thick, nice and sturdy, make a really good pot. This one, we did dragonflies, we did stump work dragonflies, and I just put it on this background, and I didn't really have any mind about what I was going to do with this afterwards, and it's been hanging around for quite a while now. But I thought this is perfect. So you can make them different dimensions. They don't have to be all little short ones. So if I fold the top and the bottom in and the edges in, I'm just going to move that one out of the way for a second. And then I'm going to curl it that way and sew it there. And then I've got this really tall, thin pot. But how beautiful does that look? The little dragonfly just he pops out. I'm going to show this to the front camera. Really tall, elegant pot with this beautiful dragonfly on it. So I think this embroidery was waiting for this moment. This is what it's meant to be. So I am definitely going to make that one into a pot. So keep an eye on my socials for that one. So I'll put it on my Facebook page and my Instagram page and my YouTube community page as well. So you can use lots of different kinds of embroidery. As I mentioned, we've looked at slow stitching. I've showed you a needlepoint pot. Quilting is also really good. This was the piece that I made for our 5 stitches for quilters. If you make quilts, if you're into quilting and you wanted to have a go at embroidery, these were 5 stitches I suggested were really good for you to get started. And this is a little sampler I made, and this is on just a piece of vintage quilt. So it sort of starts like this, just little panels of old cut up vintage quilts. And you've already got that stiffness in it, and then you can add stitching too. I've done some more quilting on it, laid some more fabrics and done a little bit of embroidery. So this one is quite stiff now. So these are really good starting point for these pots. You can add to them, and then you've already got this nice base to work on. So quilts are definitely something you can have a go at. There's another little piece of one there, or you can quilt your own. I've just got some vintage ones that I like, but you could make a little quilted piece of your own and stitch on that. And you can see how easily they make that form of the pot already without me having to do anything with it. So the other way you can make it is to build your pot around a form, so a shape inside, and you can build your pot around it. And this is really good if you're making one from scratch, if you want to do your embroidery from scratch, and if you want to make your pot a particular size. So if you want to put your little tea light in it, then it needs to be able to fit the tea light, so you can make it to a specific size if you want. So I'll show you some forms and what I mean by that. So this is a roll from a roll of stickers that we use to send our orders out. We print our address labels on it. This is the cardboard that comes inside, and this is really stiff, and this is great. And you can see how this one fits around this tube. So I've got something really solid. I can make it this specific size. So I can have this form and then make my stitching fit around the form. And then also the advantage of doing this, I'll show you at this end, is I've got the size of the circle that goes on the bottom. If you're freestyling it, you have to work that out, and I will show you that in a second how to do that. But if you're using a form, you've already got the diameter, you know how big your circle is, you can put that on and you can draw around it, and that will give you the size of the base. So that's quite handy if you're using a form. Other things that you can use, inside of toilet rolls, perfect for this, because what you can do with this as well is you can cut down the middle and you can make it smaller. If you want a smaller form, if you want a bigger form, you can cut 2. And you can put one inside the other, and you can make whatever size form you want. And you can just stick that back together and you've got a larger form. So insides of toilet rolls are brilliant. Inside of kitchen foil, that's a really nice sturdy one, and it's a lot smaller if you want to make little ones. We've got a shot glass from the house, but you can see how nice a size that is. And again, I've got the diameter and it's something really solid. I can put my fabric around, I can do some stitching on. So just have a look around the house and see what you've got. Have a look in the kitchen for bottles and tins and stuff like that. Look in the bathroom, look in the shed, might have a bit of pipe. That's really good. And see what forms you can find. This is a little tin. So again, perfect just for wrapping my fabric around and giving the size of the base. And this is a brilliant jar as well. This was a Nutella chocolate spread. I'm going to come back to this one because this is relevant to that second pot I showed you, which I'm going to show you at the end how I do that. So I'm going to come back and show you this one then. So I'm going to demonstrate how to make one with a little piece of slow stitching. So I've got a little sample here just to show you how I've started it, and I worked this one round a form. So I've got this tube here and I've actually got a piece of felt on the back. If you do feel your pot's going to be a little bit flimsy, these slow stitching ones are quite flimsy. They hold up on their own, so they're quite nice, but if you want something that's a little bit more sturdy, you could just work it all on a piece of felt on the back. That will just make it a little bit thicker and make your pot stand up a bit better. So felt on the back, then I've layered my pieces of fabric on the front here. The more fabric you have on it and the more stitching you have on in general, whether you're doing a slow stitch one or just an embroidered one, the stiffer the pot will be. and the nicer the shape it will make. So you can choose how you want your pot to look and how much fabric and stitching you want on it. So I've put all my fabric layers on there, I've pinned them in place. I will just baste them all on and take the pins out, and then I'm going to sew my embroidery on that, and I've just done a little one to show you. So this is a tiny little one that I've done. I was going to show you the bigger one, but I haven't had time to stitch it, so I'm going to show you the little one, but it's absolutely fine. The technique's just the same. So I've done all my stitching on it. You can see my layers of fabric. There's my felt on the back, and you can actually see where I've stitched it. I've done some spirals. I do like my spirals. So I've stitched everything down. It's really nice and solid feel to it. So that is ready to turn into my pot. Now there are several different ways you can sew it together, so it's not rocket science. All we're going to do is fold it round and join the sides up. Now there's a couple of ways you can join the sides up. So we could either just over sew it, we could layer that over the top of that one and just do some straight stitches over it, or as I'm going to do on this one, I'm actually going to do 2 buttonholes and then I'm going to sew the buttonhole stitches together. So there's lots of different ways. You can just have a bit of experiment and see which one you like the best. I'm just going to show you one of these ones. So this one you can see here, I've actually overlapped the fabric and I've just done this straight stitching across it, and this is a little bit softer than it is with the felt inside, so it just makes a nice neat finish to it. So you don't have to do any fancy sewing if you don't want to. If you want to put the sides together and turn it inside out and do a nice seam down it, you can do that as well. So the choice is completely yours. I'm going to show you this stitching method. So I've worked a buttonhole stitch along the bottom and up the sides. So we need to sew the bottom to the base and we need to sew the sides together. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So you can use a nice bright coloured thread for this. You can make this all part of your design. It doesn't have to be invisible. And I'm just going to start my thread so it comes right out in the corner here. I'm just going to slide it underneath there. And because I got the felt, I can just slide it through the felt. If you don't have the felt, you can just come in from here, come underneath your fabric, and then when you start stitching that will be nice and secure. So come out right in the corner, and then all I'm going to do for the buttonhole is go down into the edge like that, and if I just go slowly, you can see that thread inside the loop, and when I pull it tight it just catches in the loop. We do have videos on how to do buttonhole and blanket stitch, so do go and check those out if you're not too sure how this stitch works. So down into the edge there, I'm kind of coming in a little bit inside the loop, pull it tight, and I'm just going to do that quite close together all the way along the edge, and then I can use that stitch to sew my ends together. Okay, so I've been all the way up to the corner and I've got the thread there that I'm going to use now to sew it up. Now I did forget to mention, by the way, if you're new to slow stitching, I haven't discovered it yet, and wondering what I'm talking about, we've got a whole playlist on loads of slow stitching videos, what it is, how to do it, some things you can make out of it, and lots of projects. So do go and check that out if you're looking at this thinking, I don't know what she's talking about. I'd like to do it, but I don't know what it is. So go and check those out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to furl that around. Just going to hold it with my fingers. If you've got a form to put it around, this is a good time. Don't know if it fits around. Oh, nearly. That'd be quite useful if it did. I wonder if I can. No, I'm going to do it without. But if you've got a form that it fits around, then put it around the form while you're doing this bit of sewing. Just going to take it out, do freehand. And then I'm just going to put that together flat. And then I'm just going to catch that buttonhole stitch. So buttonhole makes a kind of row of stitching right along the edge of your embroidery, and you can actually take this thread around that stitching. So I'm going to pick up a little bit there, pick up a little bit there, and sew it together like that. I'm going to do the stitches really closely together, so you can see the needle go under that buttonhole there, under that buttonhole there, so that's joining both sides together, underneath and underneath. Then I'm going to go all the way up to the end, and then we're going to make it nice and circular, ready to put the base on. I'm just going to go over the end a couple of times just to make sure that's really secure and it doesn't come undone. You can go through the loop, and then I'm just going to hide that thread in that seam. I can cut my thread off. Then I can open it out, just give it a little squash the other way. Can just manipulate it and make it nice and round. We've got a really cute little pot. It's so sweet. Now, I haven't done anything around the top yet, and that will become apparent in a little bit when we put the base on. I'm going to show you why I haven't done that. So now what I need to do is work out how big this base is going to be. Now, you can make your base out of different materials. You can do it with a piece of felt. Now, this is a really thick piece of felt. It's a good few millimeters thick, this one. Or you could put some thinner felt together and you could do lots of layers of it. That works quite well. Or you can make one out of cardboard and cover it in fabric. So I'm going to show you the cardboard one, because with the felt one, you can just cut the shape that you need. So if you're using a form, it's this shape. This size, you can measure this, so you can either draw around that or you could use some compasses as well if you wanted to do it that way. It's quite good to draw around the form to help you, so you've got the right size base. If you don't have a form, if you're not using a form, you're going to need to work out how big it is. So a couple of ways you can do that. I'm going to move the felt out of the way because I'm going to use the cardboard for this. Now, you can do the creative way, let's call it that, and kind of wing it a bit. So if you make this as nice a round a shape as possible, you can put this on your cardboard and you could draw around it really carefully. Don't get any pen on your embroidery, and you get roughly the right shape, and you can just tweak it a little bit with your scissors if you want to. If you want to use maths, you can use maths. So I'm going to show you how to use maths. So information about a circle. This is the circumference all the way round. From one side to the other is the diameter, and half the diameter is the radius from the centre to the edge. That's the radius. So if we want to draw a circle on our cardboard with a compass, we need to know the radius. We can find out the radius if we know the circumference, and we know the circumference of our embroidery because we can just measure from one side to the other. So when that's curled around, that gives us our circle. So before you sew it up, measure from one side to the other. So measure from there to there, and that is the circumference of your circle, and then we can find the radius. So to find the diameter and therefore the radius, you need the equation D equals, so the diameter equals the circumference divided by pi. So pi is 3.142. We know the circumference of my pot. I can divide that by pi, and that will give me the diameter, and then I can halve that, and that will give me the radius. So my circumference for this little pot is 8 centimetres. If I divide 8 centimetres by pi, that's 3.142, I get 2.5 centimetres. So I know the diameter of my little pot is 2.5 centimetres. I can halve that for the radius. I can set my compass to that, and I can draw my circle on my cardboard, and I know that will fit my pot. So draw my circle on my cardboard, so just something stiff enough that will make a nice solid base. Cereal packet cardboard works quite well. You can always double it up if you want it a little bit thicker, or if you've got a bit of thicker felt, you could use the felt as well. So I've drawn my circle. That was my radius, 1.25. That gives me a circle with a diameter of 2.5, which one is going to fit my pot. So I just need to cut that out like so, and then I'm going to cover that with fabric, so that will not look like cardboard on the bottom of my pot, and I can sew it to my pot. So you just need a little bit of fabric, a bit bigger, maybe about 1 centimetre, half an inch bigger all the way round, and I can just cut that quite loosely. Doesn't need to be super accurate, this. We just need some fabric around the edge. And then I'm going to work a running stitch around the edge of this fabric, and then I can pull that in over there, and that gives me a little covered, kind of like a little button really. So I'm just going to use it for quite a strong thread for this. I don't want it to break, so this is a buttonhole thread, and I can just do a little running stitch all the way around the edge of that. So I'll just show you with my needle where I'm going to stitch that. So just go in, out, just in from the edge a little bit so it doesn't fray, all the way around like that. And just work your stitch right back to where you started. Then you can use the two ends, and you can pull that up tight around there, so then the two ends will gather up, and that will gather up around the cardboard. So you've got a nice covered piece of cardboard, and that looks like this one. So I've gathered it up, tie it off really nice and tightly, so you've got that little covered piece of cardboard, and then I can use the fabric around the card to sew it to the base. So that's going to go on the bottom like that. And I can now sew it on, so I shall show you that bit. If you want to cover that up, you can cut a little bit of felt and cover it with felt. You could sew that on, or you can just push it inside your pot when you've finished if you like. So you can do that either way. I'm just going to do it like this for now. And then I'm going to start my thread off, and I'm going to again use that buttonhole thread, that stitch that's gone all the way around the bottom. I'm going to use that to sew that to that piece of card. So my thread is ready to stitch, so I'm just going to put the base on, and if you're careful you can just pin that into place. I'm just going to go through the fabric, not through that card as well, just straight into the bottom, and that should just hold it in place until you get going. Once you start stitching it's a bit easier, but getting going can be a little bit tricky. So just a little bit of the fabric and then into the pot. There we go. Good time to check it fits. If it doesn't, make yourself another one, bigger or smaller. So thread's coming out of the pot. So I'm just going to take a little bit of fabric on the edge there, not going through the card, just the fabric, and then just through the top of that buttonhole. And I'm going to sew the two together. So I'm just sort of going round and round, go ahead, just pick up and right on the seam there. So it might be a bit fiddly, but just pick up that stitch from the buttonhole. Round again, bit of the fabric, bit of the buttonhole. Try and do that as neatly as you can. Nice small stitches, and just sew those two together. So I'm nearly back to the start. It's definitely easier when you've got a few stitches in. Pick a bit of fabric in the bottom and just underneath that stitch of the buttonhole. And then to finish it, I'm just going to slide it through all of those stitches. Back out in the seam. That'll just make sure it doesn't come undone. You can cut that off, and then I've got my base on my little pot. Just see if it stands up. Yes, it does. Really cute. And then what I can do, if you don't sew it on as you make your little button, you can just push that little base inside, and that just covers it up. Make sure it's nice and tidy inside. Push that in there, and if you did find this wasn't quite sturdy enough and you wanted a lining in it to make it sturdier, or you don't like the stitching on the inside, you want to cover that up, you can make yourself a little felt lining as well, and you can put that in afterwards. Make sure you cut that to the right length. That would need to be a little bit shorter so those sides meet there. And then you could do the buttonhole around the top. So you'll remember that I didn't do any stitching around the top, because now is a good time to do that. So I could just cut that felt a little bit shorter, make sure it's sitting nice and tight inside, and then I could do my little buttonhole stitch around the top to neaten off the top. That is in fact what I did in my little needlepoint pot. So you can see the felt lining inside, and you can see that buttonhole around the edge just neatens it off, makes it all nice and neat and tidy. And if you want to just put the felt base on it, all I've done with that is over sew it. I haven't done a buttonhole around the bottom of the pot. I've just sort of pinched it together like that and just gone over and over with my stitches just to pull it in like that. So there's several ways you can attach the bottom depending on what materials you're using, and I'm just going to show you the top of this one as well. And I've done a buttonhole stitch around the top just to neaten the top off, but you can add beads onto that. So you could also put beads on your buttonhole. We've got videos on how to do that. So you could have a little beaded top to it. Loads of stuff you can do with these little pots. Just have a lot of fun experimenting and being creative. So that's a slow stitch pot. So I leave my edges raw quite like that with slow stitching, and I just do a buttonhole around it. But if you don't want the raw edges, if you don't like that and you've got a piece of really nice embroidery and you want a nice neat edge, I'm just going to run through that quickly. So I would do a proper seam with this, and I would sew it inside out. So I would fold it in half, would cut this fabric off here, and I would run a row of stitching down here. You could do it by hand, you could do it on the machine if you like. And then when you turn it back the right way round, then you've got your nice seam there. Your raw edges are inside, and you've got a nice sewn seam on the outside. And then the same with this, you can just push the insides in. And if you wanted to do that first, in fact, maybe I would do that first. You could just fold it in like so, have a nice neat edge on that. And then you could sew it together so that that top and bottom ends up with a nice hidden seam, so you don't have the raw edges showing. So you could put that together in that way, do it inside out and then turn it back round, and just fold your edges in to get rid of those raw edges. So I just wanted to run through that if you didn't like the raw edges and you wanted proper finished edge. And then I just want to finish off showing you this pot, because this is a little bit different. So I used the Nutella jar for this one. Really brilliant jars, these ones. Look at the shape of them. So you need some sort of form for this one. So a small glass or a jar or a candle, they make quite good forms. So a glass that has been a candle in. So you need something to wrap the fabric around. So the idea of this one is that fabric is wrapped around the your form. I'll just take the lid off. And then we're going to, in a circle, so we'll gather the fabric up, that fits around the form, you even the gathers out, and then you can put your embroidery on that and you can stitch it in the shape that it's on. So you're kind of forming the pot around the form underneath. So you do need something inside for this one. I'm just going to show you quickly how to start it. So you need to choose the fabric for the inside, because that's the part that we're going to start with around the form. So pick something nice and decorative that you'll be able to see. And we're going to start with a square, which I'm going to cut into a circle and gather that up. But a square is a really good place to start. So if you just get your form and lie it down near to the edge, stand it upright, lie it down the other way, and your fabric needs to stop the other side. Then we know that that will go around the form. So start with a square, and I'll show you how to cut that into a circle. So if you happen to have a plate the right size, great, draw around the plate. If you don't, super easy. Just fold your square in half, fold it in half again. Then corner to corner, and then what we're going to do is just cut across here. If you want to fold again, you can. Might be getting a bit thick, but you can try it. It's a bit easier. And then we're just going to cut across here. So we're just cutting the corners of the square off, and this will hopefully give us quite a good circle. That's not bad. Not bad at all. So what I'm going to do now is run a running stitch around the edge of the circle. Now this is the same as I did for the base of the other pot, and I'll actually show you on here. So I've got quite a strong sewing thread in here, it's a buttonhole thread, and just half an inch, centimetre and a bit in from the edge, and just run your thread all the way around there. So I've been all the way round, and a little tip for you is don't cut a length of thread off the reel, just sew with one end and pull it through, because now when I pull this up, I'm going to pull on the one that's attached to the reel, and it will pull up and gather up like so, and then I've got all this thread that I can wrap back around the reel and use, so I'm not wasting my thread. That's a good little tip for you. Don't worry about whether it's even or not. So I'm going to gather all of that up around my pot. Now I've got the threads on the outside, so I'm going to do a double knot. Now this is a bit easier if you've got another hand. Jonathan's sitting behind the camera, he might as well make himself useful. Can you pinch that there, please? Thank you very much. It's just a bit easier with another hand. Earning your wages for the day?
I'm on overtime.
I'll give him overtime. Do a couple of...
you don't normally pay me minimum wage.
I regret asking him for some help. Right, do a couple of knots just to make it really secure. Thank you, that's it. I'm not paying you anymore. So your fabric's around your pot. Then what you need to do is you need to even out the gathers. So I'm going to just cut those threads off. Like so. So just even out the gathers around your form. Don't worry about the top, you can sort that out later. I want them kind of as even as possible, like so. And then that is going to be the inside of your pot. That is the base to work around. There we go, looking quite good. So it needs some fabric around the outside. So I've got some little pieces of fabric here. So what I'm going to do with this is just lay these on the outside, and you can pin them in place. You can just leave that fabric on the form. You can just pin them wherever you need to. Attach it to the base. And then you can layer on some other little pieces. And what you can do is you can go around the bottom now. So we're forming the whole pot in one go. And I'm pinning it to that base fabric. Don't worry about all the creases and this bit here. And if I just keep doing that, keep going round and round with my bits of fabric, you can go around the bottom, you can overlap them, and you can see how that pot's starting to form. Now I can cover up little gaps here with smaller pieces, and I'm just going to get the whole thing covered and the whole thing pinned in place. If you've got a little bit that doesn't quite fit, you can do some fancy folding. So I could fold that under there like that, and then I could just fold it over and I could pin that in place like that. So you're just going to kind of form your fabric around the base in whichever way you can. It's going to look a bit rough and ready at this stage because you need to obviously get lots of stitches in it. And I've done that really quickly just to show you the process, but I would do that a little bit more carefully and make sure this just stays tight around your pot as well. And you can see the sort of idea of how that's starting to form. So then what I would do is I would just put lots of basting stitches in. So just get a normal sewing thread in and just sew all this fabric down where it needs sewing. You can see that bit there. You can just fold that under and fold it like that and just sew it into place. So you can take all the pins out and you can work on it without the pins in it. I'm just going to talk through the next stage from this one. So I'm just going to put that on there because this is how this one was made. And then you can start doing the stitching on it. So once it's all basted and your pins have come out, you can just stitch on it. Just used a lot of running stitch. Spirals are good where it goes around the curve. That just makes that all nice and solid around the curve. If you need to stitch a bit of fabric around there, spirals are great. There's another one there, look. And you can see where these fabrics have been laid over each other, where they're going around the curve. You can see where I folded them as well. So just do whatever you need to do to manipulate it to get your fabrics to sit around this shape. If you need to take it out of the form to sew it, you can just take the form out. You've got it in your hand and you can stitch with it. The more stitching you have on it, the easier it is to do without the form in it. So just leave it on the form while you do the get the stitching started, and then you can take it off and you can easily manipulate it. It's a little bit harder around the bottom to stitch, but you can see how I can move this around and I can manipulate the fabric so I can get my needle in and out. So once you've got going, you shouldn't find that too difficult. You can put whatever stitches you like on it. You can embroider things on it. You can just do some slow stitching, whatever takes your fancy, but just enough stitches to make this a really nice form so that it all stays together and your fabric's all sewn together. You can then just deal with the top, so you can neaten this up. So I've got all these gathers showing, so you can either just turn them in. You could turn the whole pot in like so. I'll show you on this one. It's a bit more. So you could turn the whole pot in like so, and you've got a nice neat top there, and you could do a buttonhole around that if you want, or you can just leave the raw edge like that and just do some over sewing around the top in some pretty colours. You could bind it with some ribbon, you could put some beads around it, whatever you want to do. But I just wanted to show you how that one was made if you were interested in that, and just how to form that one and how that's different from the first one that we did. So I hope you enjoyed that and you've got lots of ideas how you could make a stitch pot. So many different things you could do with this. You can have a lot of fun with it. And if you want lots more ideas on things you can make with your slow stitching and your embroideries, do check out this video up here, 20 things to make with your slow stitching. Tons of ideas in there. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up as always. I'll see you next time.